repotting this little string of bananas, which is a fairly new addition to me. As of the last, I think, couple months I've had it. I've looked at these guys off and on and just have never bought one. They've been in either really bad condition or just wasn't the right time or whatever, and I saw this one and thought, you're looking pretty good. I will grab you. And I love the hanging, long hanging senecios, like the string of pearls and tears and stuff in the windows. They're just so fun. So I grabbed this guy, but he needs to be repotted. First off, as you can see, I'm picking off these little dried leaves. I see a lot of questions on these guys and string of pearls when the leaves are looking really shriveled and dried up next to the end of the stems where they're rooting, and they say, what's going on? This means you're underwatering, or in this case I am underwatering. And I have been underwatering, I'm quite well aware of it, but until I check new plants' roots and their potting medium and all of that, I am really cautious on the water with these guys, because these guys tend to rot quite easily here in Idaho, especially in the winter, just because it's cool and they don't dry out for quite a while. So he's just been a little bit deprived, which is just fine. He will recover, no problems. And also having a little bit of dieback on the stems is fine, because I can plant them a little bit deeper and they will go ahead and root up a little bit, and that will give it a better chance of survival with me. So first I am changing him into this porcelain or terracotta pot, and so it's going to be another hanging pot, but I think he'll be a bit happier in the terracotta. I really love these small plastic hanging pots because they can hang on my little sticky window hooks, and they don't need a big hook into the stud in the ceiling. But once in a while, it's worth using a terracotta pot, and then I have this pot for another beautiful plant, so it works well. All right, here's a look at the root system. It's looking great. It's all white and healthy. If this was brown, there's a little bit of brown here, but that's normal discoloration. It's not an unhealthy. Let me turn this around there. You can see all these nice, healthy white roots. So I'm not going to bust this up entirely, but what I am going to do is get a little bit of this soil, just taking my fingers under the bottom here, get some of this soil out so I can have a bit of a looser mix. Because these guys, especially in my area, like to be watered a little bit more frequently, but they really need to dry out between waterings. And so to be able to do that, this type of a mix takes so long to dry out in the winter here that just getting rid of this bottom, I can do that without really disturbing too many of the roots. If the roots were looking unhappy or unhealthy on this guy, I would rinse all of these roots off and get the soil all off and kind of start over. Squeezing it just a bit and then gently shaking it can get just a little bit more without really hurting your roots. All right, that's good enough for now. And the mixture that I'm putting this in is a little bit different than the mixtures that I put most of my succulents in. It has most of the same ingredients, just a little bit different proportions, and what it has that is different is bark. It has some just orchid bark, a fair amount, you know, not a ton, but a fair amount mixed in. These guys seem to be happier with a little bit of bark, at least here for me. And I'm planting it a little bit below the edge of the pot line because I want to add a little bit more dirt up on these stems here. So you can just put all of the branches kind of to one side. Think of it as hair. Brush your hair to one side and fill in. And then pull it over to another side. Alrighty. I am going to finish shaking this down. I just kind of gently tap it like that. Make sure none of your branches are underneath your pot when you're tapping though, because obviously it'll crush them. And then add some more and do that again, and then I will come back in just a minute and show you what to do next. Alright, so if you've seen my video about the string of pearls and hearts, you know that I like to take wire and cut it into just little links however long you want. It really depends on your plant and your pot, and then just bend it over like so to make a little kind of staple that you use to pin down branches to help them root. And whenever I buy a new stringy plant, you know, something that's more vining or trailing like this, or string of pearls or string of hearts, etc., I find that the plant always has the absolute best chance of survival if this top mat is as thick and densely rooted as is possible, and then it starts coming out and overhanging. If we start with really long, thin branches that, you know, rather than dense at the top, more sparse, long branches, it doesn't have nearly as good of a chance of survival. And these guys root really, really easily. And so to get a thicker mat, it's really very simple. And if you've seen the other videos, you've seen me do this. But you just find a branch and follow it back to its root. So this one ends right in here. And then you just lay it down inside. I'm gonna actually pin it right close to the base because this whole stem doesn't have any leaves on it and should really be in contact with the dirt anyways. Let me find a couple of these here. Okay. This one is a great example. You can see right here, let me scoot you a little closer. All right. Right here you can see these two lovely roots, but they're not anywhere, they're just sprouting out. There's another one right here producing roots, but they're not actually in the dirt. And if we leave them alone, they may or may not be able to migrate down to the dirt to get there. So we want to help them along. So you just want to pin them down so that they are in direct contact with the soil. You don't have to bury the stems, you don't have to worry about that. You just want to pin it down as close to the soil as you can. So the first thing I do is find as many stems as is possible, follow them back to their base, right where they connect to the roots, and see if along the line of stem, there's some more roots here, we can get them. See there? And help make sure they are in contact with the dirt by, I started to say soil and then went to say dirt. Okay, make sure they're in contact with the soil so that they will actually root. You will get a lot denser of a mat of roots, and therefore if you get a little bit of rot, if you have a little bit of overwatering, they're not nearly as likely to detach from their stems if they're rooted along multiple places as they are if just the very, very end is in the soil. And then after that, after I follow them back and pin what's really close directly to the soil, then we want to take some of the extra branches and weave them in and pin them down also to root instead of hanging over. But I'm going to do this first and come back and show you that. All right, one more thing that I thought of as I'm going along doing this. When you follow the branches back to where they're rooting, you don't have to say here's, you know, where it connects to the dirt, obviously, and up here there's some roots coming out. This entire section doesn't have to be pinned to the dirt. It's already rooting here. Just pin the other section down, and if there's a little loop up, that's just fine. After it roots, you can cut it or you can leave it connected, and it'll be even happier and healthier for it. So these guys get really jumbled in here, and it's hard to find, you know, a whole length of soil without another stem crisscrossing or something that you can pin the entire thing down. But don't worry about that. Just make sure that the place where there's roots, or a place where it looks like there should be roots, maybe because there's no leaves left, pin that down to the soil and just make sure it's in good contact with it. Alrighty, so I got all of the ends pinned down, and I also got most of the dead, any shriveled dead or yucky looking, you know, leaves off. Not really because it harms the plant at all, but I like to remove them after I get a new plant, just so that when I come back later I know, okay, is this new dead, you know, is this new stuff that has been dying since, you know, since I've had it, or is this old die off? Then I shouldn't worry about it because it happened a long time ago. And so that's why I like to clean them up. It's not that, you know, having a few dead leaves on them will really hurt. So once you get to this point and you've pinned down the root section as much as it may need to be, you may find that some of your pins kind of are popping up, and I have, you know, probably 30 pins in this already. And what you want to do is just take some more soil. If you're using any really big bark pieces, you might not use that for this section, just because it's kind of a little bit unsightly. So after we do that, then I'm just gonna give her a good little jostle and settle into all of those nooks and crannies and stuff that we made. Make sure I'm not setting it down on it. All right. Okay, so that fills in the soil just a little bit more. Oops. As you can see here. But not covering, you know, a bunch of the leaves, and when I water it should settle even more off of, you know, most of the leaves, because we don't want to really be covering a bunch of leaves, but we do want all of those pinned stems to be in really, really good contact with the soil if possible. And this will all settle, you know, and compact over time. All right, the next thing is, if it has really long, kind of scraggly growth, which a lot of times these guys do, especially if like this guy came from, I forget, Home Depot or, you know, one of those places, and so the ends get really straggly. And this isn't really ever going to get a lot better once they get kind of stretched out. However, sometimes when they get healthier, they start branching from down here, and then the growth appearance is a lot better. So there's a couple things you can do. You can cut them off, which sometimes I do if they're really, really looking straggly, and then you can root them in water or root them some other way if you want to. Or the other option is just to pin, to take the branches and shorten them a bit by pinning just a loop, you know, however you want to go about that. And then what's left hanging over the edge of the pot is going to be shorter, and it will root where it's pinned and likely send out branches from here, this loop that's pinned. And if they're really long and straggly, a lot of times if they're in a window, they're already below the window line when we get them, and then it just keeps perpetuating the really thin, scraggly, you know, growth even further. And wow, these guys do get tangled easily. To eliminate that, just immediately shortening them and using the extra material on top here to just give you a really, really thick, healthy mat, and they will start branching. If they root, they will start sending out new branches, and eventually you can come and cut these loops so that you don't actually have whole loops. But if you'll notice, after you buy them already, a lot of times they'll be, you know, it'll be rooted here, and then it'll be rooted here, and it'll be all connected. And that's why, because these guys are really easily pinned down and will root from there. And they have a much better chance of surviving if they're still attached to the mother plant and rooting than if you cut them off and make cuttings out of them. So that's why they come that way, and that's why it's easy. It's an easy thing to do. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take some of these scraggly ones and pin up some of this healthier growth up here to have my top be growing really, really thick. And then as it branches out, all of the new healthy growth will then give me length, because obviously length is what we want with these guys, but healthy length is so gorgeous, and not healthy length is kind of sad. And so I would rather put all of this energy kind of into getting the top really, really good and healthy and sacrifice some length for now than the other way around and have it look really, really scraggly for a really long period of time. Because when you just let it continue to grow in a long formation like this, they don't branch out nearly as quickly, and they're not rooting anywhere, so they're not likely to send up new stems either. So it takes a long time for your root mat to grow in and get more healthy when you leave all of the leaves long, and because of that, it's a lot slower for them to send out new leaves, which means it's going to be a lot longer until you get a big, bushy, really fun, healthy plant, which is what we all want, right? All right, I'm gonna work at pinning these guys up, and then I will be back. All right, one other thing that I do is when I come across a really, really long branch, and I don't really want to loop it way up and pin it, but maybe it's sprouting roots, you know, along, there we go, sorry. Maybe it's, you know, got some roots sprouting out along for quite a ways, and I don't want to pin the whole thing down, because that would take a whole bunch of pins and there's not really enough room, etc. Like with this one, for example, it's got several little roots starting along here. What I do is lift up the branches and just wedge it right inside of the lip and use the lip to hold it, make the bend where it'll kind of wedge against the edge of the pot, and then just run it along the edge underneath these guys, and then where it's in contact, you don't even have to pin it. It'll be held in contact with the soil, and the vines that are across it will help hold it down, and then the other end can just drape out and be a little bit shorter wherever you let the end go. So that's just one thing that helps me not use quite as many pins, but still gives you the same desired effect of putting the stems in contact with the soil. All right, I think I have pinned up what I want to have pinned up. So after the final pin, doing this again, that's why we didn't just keep adding before, just a little, and tamp it down. Any larger pieces of bark I'm just going to remove here. Now if you're doing this, it's really, really important to be using a really, really loose soil. If you're using succulent soil, just regular succulent soil from the store, this is a really, really bad idea and will make your stems probably rot, unless you live somewhere where it's really, really hot and your mix dries out really, really fast. So it needs to be a really loose mix, like a gritty mix or a pumice, you know, adding pumice. This particular mixture, you know, you could probably be fine with about 1/3 of a potting soil, medium type substance, and 1/3 pumice, and then split the other 1/3 between some vermiculite and bark, so that you get a little bit of moisture retaining ingredients, but also a lot of breathability. And what size your pot is matters a huge, huge amount, as well as what it's made out of. This particular pot, being pottery, is going to breathe and dry out fairly quickly, and this pot size is not very deep, as you can see here. And I meant to show you before, I mean compared to my hand, so it's about 4 inches deep, and it does have holes. My husband drilled holes. It didn't actually come with holes, but he made holes in it for me. But the pottery breeze, it has just a light paint on it. It's not glazed or sealed in any way, and so that matters a lot as far as how much gritty stuff you need versus how much of a potting medium could be fine. But these guys like water, but they really need to dry out in between waterings, and they need to dry out quickly so that their roots can grow and so they can be happy. And so a medium that allows you to water more frequently is going to help keep these guys happier. I have been ready to pull my hair out with these stringy type senecios, and especially string of pearls and other ones in the past, and I was underwatering them most of the time, and once I figured out that I was underwatering them and that's why they were dying, I started watering them too much and the potting medium wasn't drying out enough. And then they had several disasters where hooks fell out of the ceiling multiple times and just kind of decimated my string of pearls. But these guys have been much happier, having a much more frequent mist and, you know, nice little just rain kind of like drink. I say that they act more like epiphytes for me, as do the string of hearts, which are a completely different species in a completely different area of the world. But all of these more stringy succulents with the finer stems act more like epiphytes here in my area, meaning that they like water, but they really like a medium that dries out really fast. So they like a quick drink and then to get dry. So I think that's it for today for repotting this lovely little senecio radicans or string of bananas. But this is exactly how I do my string of pearls, string of hearts, string of tears, you know, you name it. These guys I treat all the same, even though, like I said, I know the string of hearts are fairly different, but they behave similarly for me in their preferences. So that's it for today. I will talk to you guys soon. Please like and share this if you know someone that would use the information and would find it beneficial. And if you'd like to join our Facebook group, that will be in the description box below. It's just a private little Facebook group just for people on this channel, so it's fairly small and people are super nice, and it's a really fun place to be able to share a bit more than YouTube allows us to, and show photos and talk and that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to join that, it'll be in the description box below. And until next time, happy growing!